Get started. Thanks, Aubrianne. Welcome everyone to Saskatchewan Links to Learning with Can Do. We are so honored that you have joined us this afternoon. My name's Michelle. I'm joining from Amiskwaci, Waskahigan, Edmonton Treaty 6 territory. We got a gorgeous day outside. Last week, that was a different story, but this week it feels like spring must be right around the corner. So I hope wherever you are that the sun is shining, that you are well, that you are safe. Thank you for joining us. So this afternoon, the conversation is around food, strengthening community through food projects. Really good. This is our last presentation. This is our last workshop of the week. So I got to sit through 3 of them earlier this week. And let me tell you, we're in for a treat. There's really good information. This is a really excellent resource, perhaps opportunity for your community. So just get comfortable, ready to be inspired, ready to take in this good knowledge. There will be an opportunity for questions and answers and comments at the end of the presentation. There's lots of time for questions. If you have questions throughout, feel free to use that chat box. We will absolutely make note of any questions that you have, and we'll bring them to the presenters today. Also, at the end, there will be an evaluation link sent to you, and it's really important to hear your feedback about today's presentation, the workshop. When you fill that out, your name will be entered to win one of 2. There's 2 Visa gift cards at $400 each. Like, wow. So fill out that evaluation link. Not only just, for a chance to win that gift card, but again, your feedback, your voice is really important to us. All right, so I'm going to introduce our first speaker. So the workshop itself is really about more than just food. Food projects produce more than food. They also provide opportunities for employment, youth engagement, and deeper integration with community projects. Through firsthand experiences, this session explores how food projects empower communities in ways beyond the plate. The conversations will focus on why our guests undertook a community food project and its results. And I'm really looking forward to our guest speakers this afternoon. So Branavan will be offering some insight about the Grocer, kind of behind the scenes. So he is an alumnus of McGill and Acadia University with a business and nutrition background. He is presently finishing his MBA in Community Economic Development, go you, at Cape Breton University. His experience spans private and nonprofit sectors, and he brings a unique perspective on using community-based approaches to promote health and economic development. At the Grocer, Branavan supports communities in their efforts to take back control of their food system. And I'm going to pass it off to the amazing Aubrey, and she's going to introduce our other 2 guest speakers.
Yes, thank you everyone for being here. Like Michelle said, my name is Aubrey. I'm coming to you from just outside of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and I am the student director for Can Do. Just before everyone hopped on, we were talking with Jacques, and he said that life's too short to not have fun. And so definitely have fun with this, write in the chat, and really interact, because that's where you get the most learning out of this all. So with that, I'll introduce Jacques. And so Jacques is a partner with BDO Consulting. He is based in the Winnipeg office and has 20 plus years of experience with First Nations finance, working in the financial advisory, management, and economic development capacity. And he also is BDO's National Aboriginal Consulting Lead for Canada. So Jacques has undertaken engagements across 7 provinces. His office work with First Nations has led to successful outcomes for communities in financial accounting, project management, debt retirement, and bringing value to all programs and entities throughout local consultation. And currently, his focus is on how to enable substantial capacity improvements of First Nations through accounting and management reporting to bring value through qualitative financial information frameworks by generating a specialized focus on best practices. And so he comes with him a wealth of knowledge. I could go on probably about all the experience he has, but you're going to hear from it firsthand. So I know you don't want to hear me speak. You want to hear the experts. But with us also, we have Paul. I believe I actually have had the opportunity to meet Paul at a Can Do event before. Very inspiring, has a lot of experience as well, and he is an economic development consultant with Aboriginal Services Saskatchewan. And so he has 30 years plus experience working within First Nation communities and 10 years with BDO. Paul brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the team. Paul has previously been an on-site band manager for several First Nations communities, working alongside chiefs and council members, with the main objective in each community has always been to assist in ensuring First Nations developmental goals are achieved. And so again, amazing speakers we have here. I'm always excited every week to come to these links to learning, but this one I am also very excited for. And so without further ado, I will let them take the stage so that you can hear their expertise and everything they have to share with
us. Thank you, Michelle and Aubrey, for the awesome introductions there. Thank you everyone for attending, and it's such a pleasure to be here today to talk about what we do on our day-to-day. So as Aubrey mentioned and Michelle mentioned, today the conversation is going to be around food projects and how they're not always just about offering food, but there's other different pillars that can be used when we look at a food project, and one of the primary ones could be youth education, health education, as well as economic development opportunities. So I'll dive into a bit about what the Grocer does, and then I'll pass the conversation over to Jacques and Paul, who have a lot of experience working with communities, and they'll talk about some of the projects that they've worked on as well. So what we do at the Grocer, our primary focus is to empower communities to take control of their local food system by sustainably growing produce year-round using proven farming solution. Our primary technology is a modular farm. So it looks like a shipping container on the outside, and inside you have a hydroponic growing system. And again, the goal of this farm is to be able to grow year-round, sustainably, with no prior experience in agriculture or farming. So how do we stumble upon this idea? So a couple of my colleagues were working in remote parts of Canada where food insecurity is pretty prevalent. And what they decided to do is they wanted to allow communities in the harshest climates to be able to grow food at an affordable cost. So we started working with a lot of communities in Nunavut and Nunavik, where we work directly with the communities to allow them to grow fresh produce. While we were doing that, we were having these interesting conversations where communities were with communities that are road accessible. And that's where the project started to sort of pick up. Again, we are a social enterprise, and we pride ourselves on the ability to help plan, initiate, and implement these projects. And again, every project and every community is so different, but there are very similar social mandates, as well as financial and as well as economic mandates that we see across the board. And my goal today is to sort of highlight a few of these projects. So if we look at the project as a whole, our goal is to help the community really start this project off and plan and implement this project under 3 months. So when we say planning, we have the engagement piece as well as the planning, and then we have the implementation, and then we have grocer technicians who arrive on site and provide the training for the operators and the program managers, and then we maintain an ongoing relationship. And the second goal for us as a social enterprise is to make sure that the community is able to effectively distribute the produce within the community, build a holistic approach to the distribution model, as well as explore new opportunities in the region. For example, there's a lot of communities who will have a couple of grocery stores or businesses that they're able to sell to. Some communities will focus more on the education side, where they'll partner with their local school. And again, we want to make sure we're having the right conversations and we're able to implement the project, which is truly beneficial for the community's needs. And in order to do that, we need to start looking at it from the engagement piece, having the right conversations, figure out which departments sort of want to work on this. So I've worked with economic development officers before, I've worked with health directors, I've worked with managers of the deaf corps that work for the nations. So the goal is to figure out how the project needs to be set out, and then sort of have the right conversations, talk to community members, community leaders, explore different funding opportunities as well, and then make sure we're able to implement the project, and then train community members or youth in the community that are interested in working on projects like this, and then sort of making sure that they're effectively trained and then also able to distribute the produce effectively. So over the couple of years, we've have a growing network of farmers, and the goal here is to be able to share a lot of the learnings as well as some of the barriers. So as I mentioned, we did start initially with a lot of the remote communities, and now we're working with communities right outside of Vancouver, like Squamish, and we have worked with many different partners like BDO, as well as the co-ops and universities and government research agencies as well. And again, the goal is to be able to leverage these resources to make sure that the project is successful for the long term and ensure that it is self-sufficient. So I'll dive into a bit of the projects and see what nations are doing across the country. So we recently had the opportunity to work with Shishagwaning First Nation on the Manitoulin Islands. And again, they planned this project right before COVID, and they were able to get the project started. And again, their goal was to initially distribute produce directly to their community members, looking at doing a community food box. And then their second phase, which is in current planning and implementation phase, where they're looking to buy another modular farm and have that as an opportunity to sell and distribute produce to nearby communities. And again, since it's a modular project, there's ways where we could phase the project out. If your first phase is to start off with a food box, like a community food box, and then your second phase is to sell to a local grocery store, we're able to do that in a progressive manner. And during this time, we were also able to work with Squamish Nation. They have a very comprehensive food hub project already where they're distributing food, and they were cooking for community members as well. And the goal with implementing a farm like this, which allows the community members access to fresh produce year round. And again, their produce that they'll grow in their grocery unit will be distributed using their existing program, which is already a food box initiative. And the goal there is to ensure that they have that fresh produce, as well as growing different cultural crops. So again, the goal is to ensure that not only are we able to grow the right produce, but we're also able to distribute effectively to the community. The project in Norway House Cree Nation is a bit different. It has sort of a mixed model approach where the community is also selling some of their produce to the local grocery store, which they package, and they have a brand, which is Life Water Gardens. And again, the goal of this project is not only to have fresh produce in the community, but also give employment opportunities for folks in the community, create an opportunity to distribute produce at the local school, as well as healthy new alternatives for local community members. So by selling some of the produce to the grocery store, they're able to offset some of the costs of distributing produce to their community members. And again, by growing multiple different varieties, they're able to do so. So if you're looking to sell spinach or some cultural crop directly to community members, you could sell different varieties to the grocery store, especially if it's a smaller community. Again, this is one of the projects in Prince Rupert in BC. This is a nonprofit that represents the society in Prince Rupert. And again, they had an existing small food hub, which is more of a community garden approach. So it was a smaller operation, and the goal was to sort of start growing at a larger scale and year round. And most of the produce will be distributed directly to community members, as well as offsetting some of the costs so that vulnerable community members have access to the produce as well. Again, this organization had a bit of experience in growing food, which they sort of incorporated into selling to local businesses as well. This is one of our projects in Kugluktuk, Nunavut. So this is a strong emphasis on the youth education and food sovereignty piece, as well as also being able to offer healthy produce at an affordable cost. So as we know in Nunavut, the price of produce is typically high due to the shipping costs, as well as issues of freshness. So the project was implemented by the hamlet with partnership with the local school and the teachers and the kids. So the kids and the teachers play a pivotal part by helping with the day-to-day, as well as marketing some of the produce directly to community members. So the teachers help with the operations, kids are helping with the seating, and they get to use the system as more of a hands-on educational tool. Produce is used in the lunches at the cafeteria, as well as distribution of a community food box directly to community members. And they're also starting to look at an opportunity to sell to the local co-op. This was one of our pilot projects in northern Quebec. So the local co-op manages the system. They have an operator who oversees the project. And again, their goal is to grow some cultural crops like Mount Sorrel, which is sold directly to community members. And they also grow some different varieties, which they're able to package and sell some at the co-op store, as well as donate some to the community members. Again, a lot of these projects will have the social component, which is to focus on donating a portion of the produce that's grown in the system, as well as using it in like cooking classes, incorporating recipe cards, and etc. This is a perfect example of an existing community garden that was successful, and they wanted to sort of be able to grow year round. And this project is in Inujuak. So they were growing using a traditional greenhouse at a smaller scale, and being in a remoter part of Canada, the growing season is very limited. So what they decided to do is they wanted to implement this project, again, fresh produce year round. Community members sort of wanted an all year sort of option for them to purchase produce there. And again, they do have a lot of curriculum with youth involved and hands-on training as well. And one of the final sort of touch points here around the food projects is a lot of the communities will also create a brand, an entity that they use when they're selling the produce. For example, in Norway House Cree Nation, they have their Life Water Gardens. So when they're selling their produce, they have packaging, which is sustainable packaging and labeling as well. And when they sell the produce to the grocery store, it's easy to differentiate the different varieties at the grocery store. And it sort of gives it an extra social brand as well. So a lot of the folks, when they know they're buying this produce, they know it's supporting a local community initiative. And we're able to support with that marketing and packaging support as well. So what I'll do next is I'll pass it over to Jacques and Paul, and they'll be able to share more about some of the projects that they've worked on as well.
Thanks for that, Donovan. Branavan.
Thank you.
Community benefits, food security. You're able to grow 23,000 mature plants. There's always an employment opportunity, 15 to 20 hours per week. The community engagement is really the large piece, the innovation within a community garden or a school food solution. There's all kinds of different aspects with regards to developing community engagement. You can have at the school the name, the grocer container type of an environment. You're able to also get involved with the health programs in Canadian prenatal nutrition, because very often some of the isolated communities, a lot of the nutritional food is not always readily available in a lot of the different grocery stores because of some of the challenges there are in shipping and maintaining an inventory of perishables that is suitable for a lot of the health initiatives that are in place. There's educational opportunities. At BDO, we believe that each one of the programs, whether you're in health, education, or other, in providing services to your community members, there's always an opportunity to be able to incorporate healthy solutions. And part of incorporating those healthy solutions in an educational context is by developing a land-based education curriculum for K to 12, which also incorporates many of the traditional teachings of various communities that they may have. Paul, I'll turn over the next slide to you.
So BDO can assist the communities in applying for grants. We can plan the program, see where the funding can come from, and help to execute those plans and bring the container from Grocer to the community in all in a timely fashion, and bring the work with the community from the start of the project to the end, and with the experience that BDO has with First Nations and funding programs and the possibilities of grants, we're well versed in helping in that regard. So you know, we like to, if we can attract grants to a community, then the costs are considerably less. The input costs by a community could end up being substantially less than if you had to go out and acquire the grocer on your own. And many communities don't have the resources for that, and we can look for funding in many different areas that are applicable to bringing this to the community. I think that in a lot of the community, in the planning for the program, I think youth is a big consideration, because the youth want to be engaged. The youth are now more energy conscious, green, looking for green energy sources, looking to bring gardening back into the community. It's been missing for a number of years, and the Grocer is one of those avenues to bring this back from the planting of seeds, in seeds being both from the growing standpoint and from traditional teaching standpoint. So at BDO, we're conscious of that, and bring that to working with the communities. So having said that, I think we could, do we have one more slide, Branavan? Yeah. So, And so with the grants, and that's like I was saying, with the grant, we can, it can bring down the price of the cost of putting the system into play, and strengthen the food security for the nation. And that's many aspects come into play with that. I mean, whether coming back to the youth, or youth looking out for the elders, or the elders communicating within the program. It all amounts to a quality of life, an improved quality of life for the community. So.
Things are very important to remember is no matter what the local situation is, there's always an ability, there's always where there's a will, there's a way. And if there's anything out there fund-wise that can help assist the community in bringing such a terrific growing food system to increase the health component in the community, we're always up for a challenge. Some of these multiple funding streams that are available have produced results that were extremely successful for the community, that never thought that they would be able to access this type of a growing system. And through various contributions, whether it's Corps, LFIF, or other grants, provincial, federal, municipal, we would tap into absolutely every single opportunity there is to better the community in an angle towards better health for all of the different groups, the youth, the members, the elders. And that's something that we're very proud to be associated with Grocer, and being able to, and having an opportunity to be able to deliver, to give back to First Nation communities.
Awesome. I really believe the funding piece, in all three of the presentations, one of the questions was, what about funding? Where can I access dollars? So thank you for sharing that bit of information. It is about quality of life for our people, for our communities and our families. And I think, having the youth being engaged in this and being very intentional, but then also providing space for elders to bring in their wisdom and their knowledge, I think is really good. It's life-giving to the community. So one question I have is, what are some of the critical factors for success when it comes to these food projects and community programs?
Is that directed at me generally, or anyone in particular to answer, Michelle?
The three of you.
Perfect. Well, I'll go first, since I opened my big mouth. I think the collaboration that we see between the programs, the will from educators, from individuals leading health initiatives, the chief and councils, elders, all the demographic groups within a community contribute hugely to the success of implementing a food security initiative. And we find that the youth are more susceptible to embrace new ideas like this type of a technology that perhaps is not something people a little longer in the tooth have not seen, but definitely something of huge benefit. A lot of research has been done. A lot of support is provided by Grocer in order to ensure that the proper nutrients are provided to the plants, that the plants are able to grow according to the food science involved, and that the end result is a healthy alternative, regardless as to how it's disseminated throughout the community. If it's done for an economic development purpose, then you would have an implication where you're able to teach youth members, and with elders participating, you're able to teach how you're going to go about taking a seed from seed to plant, how the plant is going to be cared for, then it's going to be packaged, and then basically sold off as an economic development initiative to a local store, envisioning the ability of different members to be able to visualize how you monetize a business initiative like that, and how you're able to fund it as well through supporting programs like Corps, LEDSP, and so on. From an educational standpoint, you can certainly utilize the Grocer and all of the processes that are included in growing a plant from seed to sale. And you're able to include that in a curriculum where you can demonstrate at all the different age groups exactly how the process relates to them, to their families, to the community. And I think it's an absolutely terrific undertaking to see occur within a community.
Thank you. Paul or Branavan, do you have anything to add on to that?
I think that I think one of the things that we're seeing in the latest community that we're dealing with, it's Matthias. It's going into the school system, and the school director, she is that application has a very, very strong educational component, and they see it. They see it. The elders see it. I think from a standpoint of almost a mental health and wellness for the community, being able to provide the food security for the nation. So I think there's and I think from that there are many things being portrayed there, like a sense of pride from the people that are actually producing the product. So I think that bringing the people who are engaged in bringing it to the community are well, we're all engaged, or they're all engaged in making it happen. Oh, and one thing also, and I do notice that other communities do also have the name and the names that they are using in their language, and it is classified as gardening, and which is kind of an important a word as opposed to agriculture or farming in general, and it's more of a traditional value.
Yeah, and I think Paul, just to add on Paul's point there, from my experience working with the communities, and even in the last couple of webinars that we've had, the common success factors we see are we have a handful of community members who enjoy like food, farming, helping folks, other community members. So like the number one example would be like Jackie in Virginia. There are like primary reasons why the projects are successful, right? There's a handful of community members who take it upon themselves to help other people in the community. And they take pride in that. And I think that's probably one of the biggest factors of success too.
Amazing answers to Michelle's questions. I just want to say the presentation has been amazing. And just a reminder to the audience, like, ask your questions in that chat. I'm sure, like, when I was listening, so many different questions are coming up in my head because it's such an interesting thing to take on. And so ask your questions in that chat, or feel free to unmute yourself at any time. And let's kind of get this conversation going where it kind of leads to action. And I do want to say, as the student director for Can Do, I'm so happy that you mentioned youth in your presentation, because exactly what you said, like, youth are eager and they want to get involved, and it's just a matter of asking them and involving them, because at the end of the day, like, youth, they're our next leaders. And so when we teach them and we guide them and we help them to go into these roles, like, that's the best. Like, and youth always want that, and we're always looking for that guidance. So I love that you mentioned that. But I do have a question for all three of you as well. And so or for whoever you think wants to answer. But how does the planning process for a food project look?
Reverse order, Branavan, go ahead and start.
Yeah, perfect. No, I'll take this one. Honestly, it starts with a good conversation with community members and community leaders to figure out what the ultimate goal of the project is. Is it have to have a strong education base? Is it more economic development? And then once you have those conversations, then we could move forward at planning for the project. So where it's going to go, how the produce is going to be distributed, and then we could loop into the funding piece. And then we find the one champion, so the operator like Jackie or Virginia or Ian, that will come in and sort of work with the Grocer team to help implement the project. So I think it honestly starts with the great conversation and the engagement with community members. And then from that moment on, we could sort of plan effectively. And then again, we want to ensure that not only is it growing, but we want to make sure the produce is actually effectively distributed within the community, and then the farm is up and running for the life expectancy of the project.
Planning, I guess that's okay. Planning, how does the planning look? If for us, it engaged first in the community. Same thing is to find out if there's an appetite for this project, and then finding those champions to stand behind and get the ball rolling. And if the ball is rolling, that's where we can assist. If we, BDO has the financial, knowledge to know what the programs have to offer, and if there is funding out there within the community, or we have to look solely from outside funding, and that's where we'd be beginning in that event. So, and obviously, BDO would be looking from start to finish. We want to see the project from the inset or onset till the completion. So and it's up and running and doing whatever we've decided, or however the community has decided it's going to function, whether it's for a nonprofit or for its economic development, and we will gear towards that.
Another aspect in the planning, it's always great when it's a community grocer initiative. It allows a lot of different grants to come into play. There's a huge ability during the planning on exactly how it integrates into the community. Is it going to supply a store as an economic development initiative? Is it going to become a health container for the health program to utilize for the various nutritional elements that the different awareness auxiliary programs are working with? Is it going to be education, where there's going to be a land-based curriculum that's cultural, that's going to be integrated into the process? And then as well, one thing we can't forget is there's a lot of entrepreneurs in various communities, and these different entrepreneurs can certainly look after obtaining a grocer container, and can certainly leverage that container into an existence within the community in providing for their families and their friends and their extended members as well. So there's a wide variety of applications of the grocer container. We've yet to see one that is beyond being able to be realized. So it's certainly, where there's a will, there's a way.
I love how you end on that note, where there's a will, there's a way. So what kind of support do you and the Grocer team provide to ensure that the project is successful?
Yeah, so for the planning support, like there's a lot of work that goes into the planning side. So I think there's a question there about like feasibility. So we want to project how much is it going to cost to run the system, how much needs to be sold to break even. So all those numbers and projections are all figured out. And then we have the implementation. And then for the training piece, so you have, for example, if there's 3 community members that are interested in working on this project, the Grocer team will provide support for training, like on site, and then we'll provide remote troubleshooting services as well. So anytime there's something wrong, they could give us a call and we'll provide support. So a lot of the folks that are working in the grocery unit are not farmers. So we're well aware of that. So we provide all the necessary tools. So we have a e-training module, we provide on-site training, we have like weekly calls, and we'll provide classes and lessons around growing as well.
Yeah, I just this morning, our guests, I believe it was Virginia and Ian, and Virginia was talking about how she would call 3 times a day when they first started their food project. And now they're only calling once a week, right? So it sounds to me that you have a really good support for the communities who wish to take on this endeavor. And I think that that is excellent, and that's so necessary. There are 2 excellent questions that we have here in the chat box. The first one is, who can help with determining the feasibility of doing the hydroponic system versus a year-round greenhouse? And what kind of factors would be the detriments of which is better suited? That's a good question.
Yeah, no, so that's a great question. So for determining what factors, it comes down to the actual like skill of growing in a traditional greenhouse. Like, is there someone locally that has that ability? How much produce do you actually want the greenhouse to yield? What type of varieties do you want to grow? Is the soil ideal to grow at that scale? So those are all some of the sort of factors you would consider when you're looking at a greenhouse versus hydroponics. And then again, if you're looking at year-round, you'd have to run the assessment on heating a greenhouse and cooling it and things like that. So we'd run the numbers, and there's different factors we would consider. So I think the BDO team and the grocery team can definitely help with looking at a feasibility for those projects.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Branavan. As well, there's always the application. If the grocer output is an economic development one, determining feasibility in an isolated community might be as simple as looking at the consumption that the local programs may have. Is there a local store? With that local store, what are the price points of the poundage of product that go out? How would you go about calculating that versus the cost that Branavan just spoke about earlier? When you factor and run all of the numbers, exactly how does that play out? What is your particular breaking point? Where do you break even? Based on the consumption and the amount of product that can be generated from the container. Exactly what kind of product is going to be generated from the container? What are the applications of that product? These are all different aspects in monetizing for economic development in a feasibility context. Exactly how you would go about establishing whether or not a grocer container is feasible or is a viable option. We've yet to find an application where it's not in the communities that we've worked with. So I would certainly recommend that anyone that's considering one and wants to run a feasibility on something like this, that they reach out to the Grocer team. We can certainly assist as well to make sure that you have the assurance and you're well positioned for success. After all, we want to make sure everyone's successful at this type of an undertaking.
Awesome. Thank you.
There's also a funding question. There was also a funding question with regards to how much funding would an interested community or individual be looking at to bring a container into a community? very often, communities, you're able to get with multiple grant applications being successful as a community, anywhere from 10 to 20% of the total cost is an earmark, depending on what the community would qualify for, whether it's isolated road access, etc. There are a lot of different factors that come to play, and every situation is different. But that would be one of the benchmarks. It's anywhere from 10 to 20%. If it's an individual with the price point of Grocer, any type of applications that come into play, it's approximately the same.
Amazing. Yeah, Jacques, you're taking my job of asking the questions. I'm running out of things to do. But as Jacques said, we're here to have a good time. So feel free to continue asking questions in the chat. Like, while these resources are here, like, utilize them. They have like expertise, and so definitely be asking questions this whole time. We are here to have fun too, though. So feel free to turn on your cameras and unmute yourself if you want to talk and have a discussion. That's always welcome as well. Sometimes I'm a little camera shy too, so no pressure at all. But definitely great presentations here. There's currently not another question in the chat, but I can ask one. So if you know me, I'm very passionate about youth inclusion in everything that I do. And so what are some things that you've seen in like your projects or in different projects that have done like a really good job at including youth in the process of this all? Great question.
For example, a lot of the youth, a couple of projects that I worked in, there's a lot of youth in the community that want to get involved in the business side of things. So like marketing and selling produce is definitely something that youth are really interested in. So like setting up a Facebook group, doing a community food box, advertising, setting up like an online payment store so people could buy and then they could distribute the produce to community members. That's something that I've seen recently that a lot of youth are interested in, because it's sort of like running an online business, right? The produce is being grown by the operator. They'll take all the produce, they'll market it, and they'll distribute the produce. Payments are all processed online. They're creating a Facebook group and things like that. So I've seen a lot of youth interested in that kind of work when it comes to the project here.
Some of the other things that we've seen with regards to youth is the ability for them to utilize a lot of the technological tools that old people like myself are challenged with, whereby they market very creatively the output of a grocer. And you can see exactly what type of skill set the youth pick up in doing this particular type of marketing. And I've been extremely impressed at what I've seen in several of the communities that we've approached with this, whereas we're certainly in a position to utilize a lot of the skill set that's existing in each community in order to promote and be able to market the grocer output in a business context. A lot of young, brilliant entrepreneurs out there with terrific engagement, and it's certainly the kind of opportunity when a grocer's in a community that can leverage to create all kinds of spin-off benefits for the members, for the community members, and for external parties that are adjacent to various communities as well.
Yeah, definitely the youth are engaged in social media usage. So that's a great tool for promoting the grocer.
We do have a question here. 10 to 20% of what amount? So example, a road access community who was interested. So how much does the container itself cost, and not taking into account the transport of the unit to the community?
Great question. So the price varies on the output that you want. For example, a smaller community might not be using 500 heads of produce a week. You might require 200. So the price might vary, but it starts around the 150K. And then for a larger unit might fall around the 180 point. So that would be the price. And then for a community that's road accessible, so one of the recent ones, a recent few communities that we worked with that are road accessible are Squamish Nation, Shishakwaning First Nation. We've worked with the folks out in Prince Rupert as well. So a lot of the communities are road accessible. And when we talk about road accessible, there's two different approaches that the communities are taking, right? When you're road accessible and you have opportunities to sell nearby grocery stores, when you're more of an isolated community, the price of produce is a bit higher, and you have few alternatives to sell. So it's a different approach that we take. So a lot of the communities will also focus more on the economic development side opportunity. When they're in an urban area, there's an opportunity to do that. For example, you could sell to a niche grocery store that only does locally grown produce, or like a farmer's market, right? Versus a bit of an isolated community. There's only a couple of options to sell to businesses.
Okay, Ben has a concern question. I found that many funding opportunities have a requirement of BCR or letter of support from band council. Are there any funding avenues that do not have this requirement? I have been unsuccessful in convincing my council of the need for vertical farming.
There are definitely avenues that don't require a band council resolution, but whenever you're going to ship a container or set one up to infrastructure, very often some kind of a letter of support's required in order to connect the container to make it a successful undertaking. And very often when you're applying for funding, there's a lot more opportunities that are available for a community where you're affecting more members. You've got more individuals that are going to participate in the initiative from an engagement perspective than particularly an individual. And that's the reason very often where a BCR, a letter of support, is involved from a band. Another thing to be mindful of is maybe obtaining a letter of support from the health program or the education program, or any of the directors that are involved in those different areas. That's also a potential where you can apply for scientific grants, or you're in a position to apply for provincial or municipal type grants. And not all of those necessarily require a band council resolution or BCR, but what they do require is an invitation to be able to deliver the container into the community and have it connected in one way or another.
Great question. We do have another one in the chat, which is good. We do have time for maybe a couple more, so feel free to keep writing in as well before we wrap this up at 4 o'clock Central Standard Time. But at what point is Grocer and BDO willing to start working with a community or entrepreneur in the process to begin a food security project? And is there a funding commitment required or a contract?
Great question. We start off right from the planning point. So like right when there's an idea and you think you know what you want to do, we could get involved in the conversation, and there's no funding commitment required just to have that conversation. So we're here to help, and we want to tell you, if you have an idea, we want to tell you that idea is possible and this is what it's required, or we might tell you, you might want to consider this or consider that, right? So we want to set, based off our experience, we want to guide you in the right way.
Same applies from our perspective. Anyone that reaches out to us with an idea in a community to bring a grocer container, there's no fee up front for any of the advice that we're going to provide. We generally speaking wait until there's an awful lot of drive behind the grant applications and the funding is in the hopper, and from a feasibility standpoint, the project commitments 100% financed in one way or another before there's any talk of contracts or requirements or remuneration of any kind. This is about bringing healthy food to communities and individuals, and we can't lose sight of that for a fee. It's not part of the inception or consideration at the onset.
Okay, well, thank you. Those are some really great questions. As you can see on your screen, there is their contact information. If you have any more questions, so maybe tonight you're just like dreaming, you're planning, you know, any questions, you feel free, don't call them in the middle of the night, shoot them an email, you know, get this conversation started and rolling, right? It really starts with that conversation, that dialogue. So thank you. Any last questions before we end? I just want to also say that Branavan has been with us for 4 sessions, so thank you so much. We acknowledge your time is valuable, so thank you for bringing your expertise to this subject. The other 3 webinars, we had different guests join us, and I think a couple of them were from the community, and they talked about, you know, from inception to where they are now. So that might be something, if you're wanting a bit more information, that might be an idea to just check out those webinars with the different guests. So I see that there is no other questions. Thank you so much for joining us, for being here. Like I said, you know, there is their information, you know, continue this dialogue, continue this conversation, you know, continue this conversation with your community as well. It's amazing when, you know, that conversation does get started, where the synergy builds. So it's all about that good communication. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jacques and Paul, for joining us this afternoon. We are honored that you are here. We just give thanks to Creator for the gift of another day, a gift of an opportunity to learn, the gift to, you know, pursue quality of life for our communities and for our families. And this is a potential opportunity. So thank you. So I hope you have a good rest of the day. May you be safe. May you be well. May you be healthy, and may you walk with ease. Be well, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great day and stay safe.